Good evening. My name is Lisa Lewis. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Silver Birch Fiction Committee, which is part of the Forest of Reading. I have been doing this for 10 plus years, and it really is my utmost pleasure to introduce one of our nominees this year, AT Woodley. His book is quite special. It's called The Boy Who Woke the Sun. And it's this young, tender boy named Elliot who goes on this journey. And along the way, he meets a spectacle of creatures. And you need to put on your magic hat because these really are, they allow you to just delve into so many questions. And that's why we're here with AT Woodley to really figure out, who are these people, or are they people? I'm not sure. I'm going to turn it over to AT right now so he can tell us more about this extraordinary piece of literature. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa, so much for that introduction. And thank you also to the Forest of Reading for having my book be a part of this phenomenal event. It's really a thrill and an honor for me to be a part of it. And also thank you to all of you out there, all the kids and all of the adult kids who came to my author visit. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to do my best not to bore you. That's my mission here today. Which is why I thought I'm going to take these crazy headphones off because I can't really hear myself. Those are huge old school headphones. And I thought, perhaps maybe the best way to approach this author visit would be to maybe tell a story because we all love stories, right? That's why we're here, to sort of share our enthusiasm for storytelling. And I thought I would maybe tell a story about how my book came to be, The Boy Who Woke the Sun. And if you follow me through some of the all of the twists and turns and some of the maybe boring parts here and there, there is a little bit of a mysterious and amazing part right near the end, which I think you might find interesting. But to begin the story, I need to tell you a little bit about my dad. And my dad used to be in a folk music group called the Travelers, way back in the 1960s. Around about the time the Beatles were making music. You probably heard about them, the Beatles. And in fact, my dad's band, when the Queen of England came for her tour of Canada, they played. And I don't think it was the Queen, it might have been the Duke or somebody in her royal entourage. Called my dad's band the Canadian Beatles. So that was pretty cool. They were a big deal back then. And I'm going to show you some of their records. I still have them, really cool old records. This is the Travelers. That's my dad right there up on the fence playing the guitar, thinking he's pretty cool. And it says they're Canada's leading singers of folk. Pretty neat. Here's another one, another album. It was a kids' album, actually. This Travelers Sing for Kids. I was not there. I was not born yet. And here's the last one I'll show you. This is called This Land, the Travelers. And this was their most popular song. This Land Is Your Land. They did the Canadian version. I think some of the teachers and librarians out there will know what I'm talking about. This land is your land. This land is my land. And they did the Canadian version, which was quite big in its day. So now, soon after I was born, my dad's band broke up, unfortunately. I know, and he went off and he started working in the printing industry, actually. But his love for music never faded. It continued, and one of his dreams was always to write a musical, a stage play, specifically for kids. And so what he did was he came to me, and I think I was 7 or 8 years old at the time. And he came to me and he said, "Aaron, tell me a story." And so I did. I told him a story about this brother and sister who woke up one day, and wouldn't you know, my goodness, the sun had not risen. And the reason it hadn't risen was because the boy who woke the sun had slept in that day. His alarm did not go off. And so the the brother and sister had to travel across a sort of magical, fantastical land to reach him. They had to outsmart a whole bunch of monsters on the way. And in order to wake him, in order to have the sun rise once again. And my dad said, "Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I like that." And he went off and he actually wrote a musical. He wrote a script for a musical based on that idea. And he even went and he recorded with all of his musician friends songs. He wrote the songs, he recorded them, he had a full orchestra. It was a pretty big deal. It was pretty neat. Uh, However, as is the case with putting together a very complicated, very expensive uh, uh, thing like a play or a film, he was not able to make it happen. Couldn't really get the financing. He couldn't get the money together, and that happens all the time. But unfortunately, yeah, that dream of his never really came to be. Now, flash forward 40 plus years. And for those of you who are 10 years old, that is 4 of your lifetimes. That is a very long time, as you can imagine. Uh, my dad had passed away quite a long time ago, back in 2002. But that story that I told him always sort of stuck with me. I don't know why, but I really liked it. And it just always kind of lived in the back of my head. And it was always just sort of there. And there came a point in my life when I thought, it's time that I really want to make one of my great dreams happen, and that is to write a novel, to write a book and have it published. And so I went about writing a book based on, you guessed it, the same story I told my dad 40 plus years previous, The Boy Who Woke the Sun. And it took me 5 years to write it. And part of the reason it took me so long was because I actually had to learn how to write a book. I had never written a book before. And so I took online courses. I read books about writing books. I worked with professional book editors. I entered contests. I did everything I could to sort of learn how to be a better writer. And I wrote that book. And then I took it and I sent it out to not 10, not 20, but 30 different publishers. I emailed it and I mailed it out there. And 29 of them said no. But one of them said yes. And that was Red Deer Press, led by the amazing Beverly Brenna, who I can very confidently say is super cool and totally awesome. You have to take my word for that. And they published the book, and I was super thrilled. But then, it was about to be published, but then something amazing happened. And this was the kind of mysterious thing that happened. And that is a friend of mine, an old friend of mine from way back in grade 7, found me through Facebook. He contacted me and he said, "Aaron, my mother just found something in the very back corner of a closet while cleaning it out in the bottom drawer in a box that was covered in dust. And she found this old manuscript dated January 1982. And it just so happened to be the very last remaining surviving copy of my dad's play." And he said, "Would you like me to mail it to you?" And I said, "Well, absolutely, sure." And so he mailed it, and it made its way across the country from Toronto to Victoria, which is where I live, to my doorstep. And it landed there 3 days before my book, which was based on the very same story I told my dad 40 plus years ago, was released on bookshelves. And I thought that was pretty amazing. You could say that's a coincidence, but to me, it was a whole lot more, because the odds of that are pretty astounding if you think about it. My father had given my friend's mother, this manuscript 40 plus odd years ago, and she'd put it away in a drawer, and there it sat very patiently and quietly for 4 decades, to just before I wrote the same story in book form, and it somehow magically made itself known and traveled all the way across the country to my doorstep, where it found me. And I thought, this is something kind of magical. It's a connection that my father and I have with this story, and it's him somehow, wherever he is now, sort of saying, good job, you did it. You made both of our dreams kind of come true in a way. Something that he started, I finished, and it was him sort of saying, hey, I'm proud of you. Well done. And I guess I wanted to tell this story because writing can be magic. I really do think it can, and it can connect you to magic, the kind of magic that's all around us. I think in daily life we look around at the ocean or the stars in the sky or the trees, and we just think, okay, those are stars and oceans and trees, but in fact they're magic. And I think writing and storytelling and reading and all of these things really helps connect you with that. And I encourage you all to do it as much as you possibly can, because magic is real. And that was my story. So I'm going to turn it back to Lisa now. And I hope you're not all asleep.
Hi.
Hello. I'm going to put my crazy cans back on here.
That was fascinating. And the fact that someone keeps something for so long is also fascinating. And I'm thinking about you had this dream, your father had a dream, and then I was thinking about Elliot, because at the very beginning of the book, Elliot has this dream, and it all unravels from there. And I'm thinking, did you think about that? Did you ever think about that when you were talking about what you just said when you were preparing your notes tonight? This dream happened for you and your family, and then now you're writing your first novel, and after 5 years of complete perseverance, it comes to fruition. And I really think kids will appreciate the story, for a couple reasons. One, they see you, and we talk to children all the time about you know characteristics that we really should try and understand and embody. And one is perseverance, one is commitment. And I think that kids look at you. You're a grown adult. You've written this fantastic book. Why wouldn't someone want to publish it? But you've just proved that yes, it's a tough road, and it can be a lonely road too. But I think you were, at all times thinking of your father and your history together. So my questions to you are: so Elliot has this dream, and he enters this world, and he becomes friendly with an octopus. And I'm enthralled by octopus, or is it octopi?
It's
Do you know?
octopus. It's octopuses, actually.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
okay, thank you for clarifying that. I just read a book called Remarkably Bright Creatures, another first novel, a book geared for adults, but there was a octopus that was front and center, and there was a point of view from the octopus every other chapter or every 3 chapters. So why did you pick an octopus?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna. I don't think anyone's gonna fault you for saying octopi. I think it should be octopi. It seems like it should be. And I
Okay.
did look it up and say, is it octopi or is it? Yeah, octopus is correct,
Yeah.
but I think you're allowed to say octopi. Why an octopus? So I started with, as I said, the boy who woke the sun, the basic sort of framework of that, and this world of Lepanthia, and within that world of Lepanthia, it could be placed all sorts of different ideas. It was kind of like a repository of ideas that I had sort of floating around that you could find ways to fit them in like a puzzle.
Mhm.
And there was, as I just at the beginning of when I started deciding I was going to write this book, my daughter Penelope, who I can't remember how old she was at the time, maybe 4, maybe 5. Anyway, when I would put her to bed at night, we would play this game, and it was a storytelling game, and she called it a story from your mouth, is what she called it, as opposed to from a book. You see, because it's just coming straight from your mouth, not from out of the pages of the book. You're just making it up. And so she really preferred stories from your mouth as opposed to a book. But we would play this game to make it interesting because I started running, kind of running out of ideas. And I said, okay, give me 3 things. You give me 3 things and I'll base a story on that. And so this one night, and oh, and the three things had to be an animal, a place, and a thing. And so the animal was an octopus, the place was an ocean, and the thing was a trampoline. And I said, okay, interesting. A trampoline, an octopus, and an ocean. And I came up with this story for her that night about an octopus who was swimming by the shore and happened to notice this little girl jumping on a trampoline on the beach and was fascinated and thought, wow, I'd really like to try that. And so waited for the little girl to go to sleep, snuck out of the ocean, kind of took her little boots, slipped braided his tentacles together, right? So all four tentacles and four tentacles, slipped them into the boots, and then started jumping on a trampoline. And I thought, okay, that was a fun, and just had the time of his life. And I thought, well, that's a fun character. And again, it stuck with me in the same way The Boy Who Woke the Sun stuck with me. And I think that's one of the things when you have an idea, and you kind of forget it within a small amount of time. Probably wasn't a very good idea. But if you have an idea that just won't go away and it just sticks there, like this octopus, I thought, what a great character. It's kind of like Puss in Boots, but it's Octopus in Boots. And the jumping of this little creature and walking around, and I thought, I would like to see more of him, and he ended up finding his way into the book that way, because I thought, okay, well, you're going in the book, you're a good character. And yeah, he ended up being quite a major character. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank you very much for that answer. And thank you also for weaving in all kinds of facts about octopus,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
I learned quite a bit, and
Mhm.
which makes me want to explore even more about the world that the octopus inhabits. And I do like at one point, the octopus was in conversation with Elliot, and the octopus was questioning him about the human effect that we have on the ocean, the pollution and all the other items that we're leaving there, and we're walking or we're swimming off, and then the fish and the plants are all suffering. So I like how you kind of touched on that too, because it's always something that we need to be aware of, and especially the younger generation as well. Um, I want to ask you about the illustrations. I know from talking to other authors that many authors have never met their illustrator, that the publisher brings them together. What happened in your case?
The same. So the publisher chose the illustrator. Now, luckily, they chose the perfect illustrator. Beverly Brennan knows what she's doing. And I was so happy with how he captured all the sort of heart and souls of all the characters, and just the general vibe of the book. And now also I was allowed to communicate with him through Beverly. She did allow me to sort of send notes, because um, certain little details were not exactly perhaps right, and I just wanted everything to be really accurate, because I know kids read, and when they're really interested in a book, they don't miss a thing. And if a little detail is off, they're going to notice in that illustration it doesn't line up with what it said. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was tickety boo, as they say. But he was
So,
great. Mike Deese is fantastic.
so the illustrator had not read your book,
Well,
or
he
had read
he
parts of it.
he had read the book.
He had read
Um,
the book. Okay.
he had read the book, but
Okay.
sometimes, and I'm talking about minutia, little
Right.
tiny things that
Right.
may have been missed, that I just was had a little bit of influence on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, did you, while he was creating the illustrations, did he send drafts to you so you could say, what do you think? Or would he just send the finished product to you just to say, yeah, that's going to work. That describes the words pretty well. What happened there?
The first, so drafts were sent, not directly, but through the publisher, and then I got to look at them, maybe comment on them, send notes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing that, because
Yeah, yeah.
when I first found out that authors didn't just call up someone they knew and trusted and appreciated their style, because illustrators are, have such personal styles just like writers do. I was astonished by that. Um, there's a couple at the very beginning of the book. Elliot, listens to the tape on meditation, the nightly meditation for kids. Is that something you do with your children?
It was at the time I wrote it, absolutely. And my daughter, again, Penelope, would listen to meditations before she went to bed, and it helped her calm down. And I started doing it too, and it is really helpful. So I highly recommend it to all you kids out there who are having a little trouble falling asleep. Try some nightly meditations for kids. There's all sorts of great, podcasts and things like that out there that can maybe help you relax and get your mind off of things, that you might can't can't stop the wheels from spinning sometimes.
I agree with you on that. And when I was a classroom teacher, I often would have meditation sessions toward at the end of the day, and I invited the parents as well to participate and extend it through at their home in the evening if that was something that worked for them. You also touched upon you had some really, so many words of wisdom were sprinkled throughout the book. And I really liked the saying, find your inner guppy.
Oh yeah.
Um, that the guppy just brings me back to my childhood in 2 seconds. Like, smells bring us back to our childhood, sounds bring us back to our childhood, and
Mhm.
those words, because everyone. I mean, I wanted a goldfish when I was a little kid, and I had a few, and then, but that word guppy is so precious. So,
Yeah.
you know, is that something that you used as a child, or what made you decide to find your inner? And it tells kids to look within themselves, because they do have something, they do have an opportunity, they do have the resources or the strength just to make it through.
Well, for me, the guppy really symbolized, because a lot of kids, everyone grows at different rates. Some your friend is like up here and you're down here and you feel like a little shrimp. And I think guppies are really small, but the thing about them is that they're super tough and really resourceful. And I think it's just one of those things where, just being small doesn't mean that you're not tough, that you're weak. I mean, it has nothing to do with that. And that the guppy sort of symbolized that for me, and I thought for Elliot too.
Thank you about that. I know you're a filmmaker as well, right?
I was, yeah, yeah.
You were.
Hmm.
Um, do you would you like to create a film based on this book? I mean, I think the visuals would be, spectacular with the underwater theme and everything, and the orbs and the special effects that could potentially appear.
I would like one of the kids listening right now who's good to become a filmmaker and make this into a movie one day. I think it should be in the hands of the next generation to make. I had a great time making films for over 20 years, and now I'm really much more interested in writing books. I mean, that's really what I want to focus on at this point. And other people can make the movies. I think this would make a great film. I think, and I think, a lot of people who read it kind of say, oh, it feels like a movie, which makes sense because I made movies for a long time. I wrote screenplays. And, as I'm writing the book, I really see each scene playing out as it would sort of in a film. So I think maybe that's sort of what you're touching on here. But yeah, I hope it gets made into a film. I think it'd be fun. I'd love to see that octopus come to life on the screen, as well as all the other characters. But we'll leave it for someone else to have
I
fun
like
with.
that. It's a call
Yeah,
to action now
it
for
is.
the kids who are now in grades 4, 5, and 6, and 7 and 8 who are reading it. When they go into high school, there might be a film club. They might want to start a film club now. I know there's a lot of use of iPhones now and iClips, which is a really
Yeah.
popular um, app that I've used with my kids, and it's just great. So I think there's a huge amount of potential. And then the the young boy going in, and maybe they'll bring in some new characters. You don't know, right? Because you could give them opportunity to create more characters.
Yeah,
Do you
they should.
do you think that there would be a second book to this? I
I,
see there could be something.
I am working on a second book. Yes, I am. I don't want to say too much about it, but I will say that it is a prequel So it takes place
Interesting.
before, and then I think one day I'm going to write the sequel as well. So there'll be a trilogy, and this book will sort of land in the middle. Oddly, I wanted to back up and sort of explore where these butterflies came from, these evil butterflies, and perhaps the story of Handsome Ned, the villain, and Granny
Mhm,
Yilba when they were
mhm,
younger, and how they
mhm.
met, and what happened between them, and how did this all happen? How did this all happen to Lepanthia? Is sort of what I wanted to do first, which I think is really fun. It's tentatively called the Butterfly Queen.
Well, you completely piqued my
There you
interest.
go. You
I love trilogies. I just and prequels, you don't hear about that often. So phenomenal decision. Have you
thanks.
have you started?
I
I
have.
know you
I
don't want to
have.
say that much, but and is the same publisher going to publish it? Or
Possibly,
just
possibly.
okay,
It's still early days, So we'll see what happens. See what
okay.
happens. It's a little bit different from the current book, so we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. We're gonna wrap up very soon. So is there anything else you'd like to say to your, audience that will be glued to every word you say? No pressure, or would you just like me to end it? I will let you decide.
No, again, I just want to thank everyone for being a part of it, having my book be a part of this. Honestly, it is incredibly thrilling for me. This is being my first book. Never imagined any of this would happen. So, I think for those young budding writers
Yeah.
in the audience, I'd say, write like there's this saying people say dance like nobody's watching. And I think my advice to you would be to write like no one's reading, because that's how I found the courage to start writing a book. I thought, well, who am I to write a book? I'm not a writer. I'm not that smart or well read or well spoken and you don't think like that. Just write your story like no one's reading, and no one has to read it if you don't want it. Just find the courage, do it. It's just you and your story in the page, and speak your truth and tell your story. It's great. It's a great thing. Trust me.
Thank you. I'm in a wrap it there, right? Like no one's reading it, watching it, listening. It's just you and the gorgeous words. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.